Hey guys, just wanted to talk about a couple things. Um, I've been trying like hell to avoid having to talk about COVID, but I got some stuff to get off my chest here. Um, we are 13, 14 months into this. Um, when this all started, the wife and I were freaking out like everybody else was, like you guys were. I'm sure. Um, we were watching all the press conferences. I was. It stressed her out too much. We went out and bought a bunch of these things where you open up doors and use keypad punches so you don't catch the coof. We wore our masks. We kept our distance, and we still do up to a point. We don't use those thingies anymore, but it should be painfully obvious to everybody now that it's not near as bad as we thought it was. It's not near as virulent. I'm not making light of the hundreds of thousands of deaths here in the States or millions of deaths worldwide, um, but there is a less than 1% chance of dying. Um, the the average death, COVID death, in America, age is 78. Life expectancy is about 78, dying of natural causes here in America. Um, Use some common sense. We protect the elderly. Anybody with comorbidities is what they call it. Protect the obvious. Those at risk. But we're not all at risk. Um, like I said, at first it made sense because we didn't know what we were what we were dealing with. Um, but now we do, and it's time to get back to normal. And anybody not wanting to get back to normal is either living in fear, uh, too lazy to go back to work or school, or wanting to hold on to the power they've accrued because of lockdowns and compliance. Um, Lockdowns do not work. It's obvious now. They do not increase they don't increase safety. What they increase is depression, suicide, uh, unemployment, homelessness, self harm, um, family violence, uh, overdoses. That's what they increase. Um, it will be years, if not decades, for us to fully recover from what those in power thought was the right thing to do. And I'm sad to report that America as a whole was all too willing to live in fear. And I wasn't first. Um, I admit it. Um, but 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 America as a whole would rather trade in their freedoms for safety instead of being sovereign and critically thinking about this. They believe the experts and cowered in fear over all this. Like I said, or just too lazy to think for themselves. That could always be the case. Um, that brings us to the next obvious topic, which is COVID passports. And that goes into the other thing. We've got multiple vaccines out there now. I will be getting mine. Uh, I got no problem with getting a vaccine. I got a flu shot for the first time in a couple of years, just this last year, just in case. Um, so I'm not an anti-vaxxer at all. What I am anti, though, I'm anti-COVID passport. Um, they're trying to push the big tech firms and government and those in power are trying to push, whether it's on paper or a phone app or something like that, proof that you've been vaccinated. I saw a press conference, I forget who, where they said pretty much well, if you we'll let you go and do whatever you want if you can prove that you with this COVID passport. I can already go there. I don't need your permission. Bye bye. Um, it's evil. We have to push back on this because if we don't, it's going to open up a huge Pandora's box of even more evil. Um, um, the big tech firms, Facebook and Twitter and all those idiots are in collusion with the federal government, obviously. Um, and you might notice the baseball cap. Um, Private industry is starting to collude um, with the federal government. Major League Baseball and a few other companies, I'll get to them later, but let's talk about baseball. I grew up watching baseball. My first few games as a kid was at the old Arlington Stadium. I'm a huge Rangers fan. Um, I remember seeing Jeff Burrows and Fergie Jenkins, Jim Sundberg. I was lucky enough to be in the stadium for Nolan Ryan's seventh no-hitter. I love baseball. It's like no other sport, no other game out there. There's no clock. You can go into extra innings. The strategy. Some people think it's boring. My brother, he hates baseball. It's boring. I get it, but it's the thinking man's sport. I love the strategy behind it. I love baseball. I may be giving up baseball now. Major League Baseball put out a press release saying that the Georgia the Georgia state government has passed some voting integrity laws, not voter suppression laws, is what they're calling it, and what a lot of other idiots out there are calling it. They don't suppress voting at all. If Major League Baseball or Delta, I'll get to you in a second, Delta. If they bother to read the bill, and it's big, you got to do a little work. You got to do some digging. What this does is it does require voter ID, but you don't have to have a driver's license. You have to have a state ID. You could show a utility bill or a utility bill with your name and your address. In other words, you have to prove that you live there, that you are a resident, that you are legally able to vote in that precinct. A few other little things about handing out gifts and water. Some idiots on the dinosaur media were going on and on about how they're not going to allow people to drink water. No, you can drink water. You can bring your own water if you're standing in line. But you can't have campaigners or anybody else out there giving out gifts, possibly influencing voters one way or another. Why Georgia hadn't already had that law to begin with, I don't know. Anyway, the left in particular, the dinosaur media and the cathedral are pushing this narrative that this is voter suppression, and you got protesters out in Atlanta now saying that they're calling it Jim Crow on steroids. They don't know their history. They don't know Jim Crow, and they've obviously not read this freaking bill. The GOP has actually given up a lot of concessions to the Democrats, to the left, concerning mail-in ballots and a few other things. But they insisted on the voter ID stuff, which isn't too much to ask. You have to show ID to go to a movie or get on an airplane. Why not vote? Back to baseball. So Major League Baseball said that they had scheduled the All-Star game in Atlanta, and they said they're pulling that event out of Georgia as in protest of voter suppression laws. Delta, that's bullshit. Major League Baseball. Delta is headquartered in Atlanta. They put out a public statement going against these new Georgia laws. I'm proud to say that the Georgia state government said, okay, Delta, you're entitled to your opinion, but you're not entitled to these tax breaks we've been giving you for years over your jet fuel. And they shouldn't get any kind of tax breaks to begin with, if you ask me. But anyway, they're pushing back, so hopefully Delta can come to their senses. There's a string of other companies that are messing with Texas. Texas is working on their own voting reformation laws too. What it boils down to is you've got the private sector trying to put pressure on these state governments as a proxy of the federal government. Federal government can't do this, but the lobbying between between Major League Baseball and all these large corporations talk to their people in the federal government, and I'm sure they've worked something out behind closed doors to apply pressure to Georgia and Texas and anybody else that doesn't toe their narrative that voting can be a free for all. I can excuse the last election cycle a little bit because of the pandemic. A little bit. As I've stated earlier, it's not as bad as we thought it would be. We're on the tail end of it. We should be back to normal soon. If not, there's something's incredibly wrong. But I may end up having to give up baseball, and I don't want to. But I refuse to support an organization that's that corrupt. They didn't bother to read the bill, obviously, and they're just a mouthpiece for the federal government right now. And I had a list of other companies that are going right along with it, and it's bullshit, guys. It really is. I love baseball. I really do. I like football and hockey, a little bit of basketball, but I've followed baseball longer than any of the other sports, and it's a love of mine. But I just cannot, in good faith, throw them any support whatsoever if they don't straighten out. What else? That's about it. So there.